They would all be shipped back to Russia or some other horrible place if I had my way. Clark Gable and Robert Taylor were well known as MGM's Golden Boys. They carried each other's coffins, had the same success, and shared the same studio. However, there was a single incident that almost ended their friendship. Hollywood celebrities were expected to serve their country throughout the war years. Taylor lost all respect for the man everyone referred to as king after what he saw that day. Because it would have ruined Gable's reputation, the tale was kept under wraps for decades. But what people believed to be true was altered when the truth about what had transpired was revealed. On August 5, 1911, Spangler Arlington Brew was born in Philly, Nebraska, a tiny farming hamlet. From the beginning, the name alone became problematic. His father, Spangler Andrew Bugg, a farmer who went on to become an osteopath, gave it to him. Teachers at school frequently mispronounced his name and referred to him as Arlington or Arlie instead of uttering the entire phrase. During World War I, the German sound of it made things even more difficult. He frequently felt alienated and was bullied by children when anti-German sentiment was strong. In honor of a distant relative, his mother had selected the name, but it only made her son's early years more challenging. His initial passion was music. He studied under Professor Herbert E. Gray in Lincoln at Beatrice High School, where he developed into a proficient cellist. Gray encouraged him to pursue a career in classical music because he sensed something exceptional in him. Like his father, Taylor aspired to become a doctor. He enrolled in Cree, Nebraska's Don College, preparing to pursue a career in pre-medicine. He worked as a member of a musical trio on Clay Center's KMMJ radio for 2 summers, earning a little cash while honing his act. When Taylor began performing in university plays, Gray became enraged because he thought he had the talent to play with great orchestras. He was a famous athlete as well. In the late 1920s, he became a local hero and set track and field records at Beatatrick High School. Newspapers not just in Beatatrick but also in Lincoln and Omaha carried his name. He wasn't confined to a single occasion. He demonstrated his innate coordination and perseverance by excelling in multiple areas. Colleges took notice and extended scholarships to him. He carried with him throughout his life the discipline of rigorous diets, early workouts, and a competitive mindset. Later on, his physical prowess would make him ideal for the daring parts for which he gained notoriety. When Professor Gray relocated to California to teach at Pomona College, it was the most significant turning point. He was followed in the early 1930s by Taylor. A bold action for someone from a low-income household. Seeing California as a stopgap before going back home, he intended to continue his studies in music and medicine there. However, Gray urged him to take advantage of all that college had to offer. The theater troupe was one of them. It was impossible to overlook his remarkable appearance and effortless stage presence. Despite Gray's concerns that it would divert him from music, he soon found himself acting in plays. An MGM talent scout noticed Taylor in 1932 when he was performing as Captain Stanhope in a Journey's End production at Pomona College. He was given a contract by the scout that started at $35 a week. Despite its modest beginnings, it would become into one of Hollywood's most prosperous careers. The first thing MGM did when they took over his image was to remove his given name. Robert Taylor took Spangler Arlington Brew's place. Ida Coverman and Louis B. Mayer decided without consulting him. They said that the new moniker would increase ticket sales and was more powerful and American. It was the start of Taylor losing parts of himself. Later, he pondered whether the Nebraska youngster was still there in any way. He was famous yet troubled by his appearance. His athletic frame, blue eyes, and well-proportioned features made him nearly too attractive. He was rejected by male audiences as being too attractive, and gossip about his private life started to spread. He was cast by MGM against strong, older ladies like Barbara Stanwyck and Greta Garbo, which only served to stoke rumors. Taylor felt trapped by the image and didn't like it. He aspired to have his acting, not simply his face, respected. MGM made the decision to alter his image. The audience erupts when they cast him in more challenging parts, such as Billy the Kid. The makeup artist tried to give his features a more rugged appearance. He appeared in sweaty, rough, shirtless, and frequently bathing scenarios in publicity pictures. They even taught him new ways to move, talk, and walk. The intention was to portray him as a tough guy. However, it somewhat exacerbated the artificiality of his image. His pay increased from $35 per week at the beginning to $5,000 per week by the late 1930s, but there were conditions attached. Unlike any other performer at the time, he had a 25-year contract with MGM. Every part he performed was predetermined by the studio, which changed him from love lead to action hero to Western star as they saw fit. He never turned down a part, according to industry sources. His devotion to MGM occasionally made him uninteresting to the media. Additionally, he had to answer to both his wife and the studio, which limited his personal independence. He played with Greta Garbo in Camille, which was his breakthrough film in 1936. He portrayed Armand, a young man who fell in love with Marguerite, her tragic character. He received acclaim from critics who pointed out that he exceeded expectations in such a tough job. The movie brought in $2,842,000 and demonstrated his depth as an actor. At first, Garbo thought he was inexperienced, but she eventually came to appreciate his commitment. Finally proving to viewers that Robert Taylor was more than just a lovely face, Camille went on to become one of the greatest romantic movies of its era. Hollywood couldn't stop raving about Barbara Stanwyck's marriage to Robert Taylor on May 14, 1939. Even though there was just a 3-year age difference at the time, it was enough for rumors to circulate throughout the studio complex. The industry frequently referred to Barbara's age of 31 as elderly for a leading lady. At the age of 28, Taylor, a charming young man from a small Nebraskan town, had emerged as MGM's ideal romantic partner. Barbara was a strong, independent actress who had previously been married once and owned her own ranch. In contrast, Taylor was still becoming used to Hollywood culture. Their ages weren't the only topic of conversation. It was a question of power. They made jokes about her robbing the cradle. Some even referred to her as his mother figure. She had established her reputation with bold movies like Babyface and earned a lot more money than he did. Because of the relationship's inversion of the typical roles, it became the talk of the town at every party. The actual wedding was a Hollywood production. Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, did more than just support the match. He gave the order. After informing Taylor that he would have to wed her, he managed the entire affair. They exchanged vows in San Diego just after midnight because they were so superstitious about the number 13. They went by their true identities: Spangler Arlington Brew and Ruby Catherine Stevens. Marion Marks, Zippo Marks's wife and the person who had set up their blind date, stood as matron of honor to keep the peace. A best man who had been selected by the studio took the place of Taylor's own family. Love wasn't the driving force behind the day. Damage control was the goal. For MGM to quell rumors regarding both stars, a flawless heterosexual marriage was necessary. To make the announcement, the mayor even assembled media in Beverly Hills. Insiders secretly chuckled at how clear the studio's strategy had been, and the whole situation felt manufactured. She was married to Taylor 7 years prior. On February 5, 1932, Barbara adopted a boy called Anthony Dion Fay. She had thought that having a child would help her and her first husband, Frank Fay, get through their difficult marriage. She retained custody of Tony after the marriage ended, but she never grew close to him. She appeared unable of showing him affection because of the severe scars from her own childhood abandonment. Tony was just 7 years old when Taylor joined the family. The youngster now had a mother who treated him like an unwanted guest and a stepfather who hardly paid him any attention. She didn't talk about him at all and kept his picture concealed in her closet. The separation was irreversible as he grew older. She refused to see him, even when he attempted to visit her while she was near death. Tony should forget she was his mother, her brother advised. In her will, she left him nothing. Still hoping for a relationship that never materialized, Tony passed away in 2006. Taylor's own actions caused a number of scandals. He had an affair with Lana Turner in 1941 while making Johnny Eager. He boasted to his pals about his obsession with her and his need to spend at least one moment with her. Barbara apparently tried suicide because she was so shocked when she learned. However, this was only one betrayal in a series. While filming Quotes in Rome in 1950, Taylor publicly courted Italian extra Lea DeLeo. He didn't bother concealing their relationship and was seen leaving the brothel in a photo. For Barbara, the shame was immense. Taylor appeared to be trying to pressure her into filing for divorce. She rushed to Rome to confront him, and for 6 weeks, they quietly negotiated the dissolution of their marriage while pretending to be a happy couple for the cameras. She was shocked when he immediately agreed to the divorce when she eventually made the offer. It was then that she understood his affairs had been a premeditated attempt to force her to let go. Taylor made an unexpected decision in February 1943. He was much too old to be drafted at 32. He had every legal excuse to avoid military, was married, and contributed significantly to the war effort at home. The studios wanted their stars to sell war bonds, stay in the United States, and make patriotic movies. But Taylor joined the U.S. military on February 9, 1943. His real name was Naval Auror. He only postponed until Song of Russia was completed, at which point he reported for duty in August. He was accepted by the Navy, but they soon determined he was too old to fight. Rather than serving overseas, he was tasked with training pilots after rising to the rank of lieutenant junior grade. It hurt. His instructions kept him in the United States, despite his desire to serve on the front lines. Nevertheless, on January 11, 1944, he received his wings and placed fifth in instructor training, demonstrating that he was among the best in his class. The 17 Navy training videos he produced between 1943 and 1945 had the most enduring influence. These were not your average propaganda pieces. They were expertly designed instructional resources that addressed everything from the fundamentals of aviation to battle tactics. Pilots were instructed on how to operate the Stearman N-2S espionage plane in the movie Flight Sense. To make the teaching interesting, he even incorporated humor. The New York Times in particular gave him high marks for his narration of the 1944 documentary The Fighting Lady. The fact that Taylor had never flown a military aircraft prior to enrolling added to the work's extraordinary quality. He began at zero, trained hard in New Orleans, and became an expert teacher and pilot. He gained notoriety at the Naval Air Station at Livermore, California, for his ability to communicate difficult ideas in ways that were easy for his students to understand. One of Hollywood's most stable marriages came to an end when Barbara Stanwyck filed for divorce from Robert Taylor in February 1951. They had spent 12 years together. The move started as a bluff and shocked the industry. Taylor began a highly visible romance with Italian actress Lea De Leo in 1950 while he was in Rome filming Quotes. In an attempt to get him to return to her, Stanwyck flew to confront him and threatened divorce. Rather, he consented without question. For him, the financial terms were terrible. Until she remarried or passed away, she was given 15% of his gross income. She gathered every fragrance and never got married again. Additionally, she maintained complete custody of her adopted son Tony Dion, excluding Taylor from all aspects of the boy's life. Taylor accepted a position that year that permanently altered the course of his career. William A. Wellman directed the $2.2 million western Westward, The Women. A wagon master led 150 ladies from Chicago to California to marry settlers, according to the narrative. The movie, which made about $4 million worldwide, demonstrated that he was capable of more than just portraying attractive love leads. In contrast to the glitzy parts he had previously done, his persona was stern and resolute. The movie struck a surprising chord. 33 weddings resulted from a Spanish community that was inspired by the film organizing its own caravan of women decades later. He went back to Rome that same year to work on MGM. A young Sophia Loren was included as an extra, and there were an incredible 32,000 costumes. Taylor portrayed Deborah Kerr's character, Marcus Vinicius. The movie helped MGM out of its financial bind by earning $1,143 million in the US and Canada and $994 million abroad. It established Taylor as more than just a romantic figure and became the biggest grossing movie of 1951. But he and MGM had a complex connection. By the late 1950s, he was the only big performer from the studio's heyday to still be bound by a contract that had been in place since 1933. Playing on Taylor's gratitude and loyalty, studio head Louis B. Mayer maintained his pay lower than other well-known figures for years. Taylor started concentrating on his favorite genre, westerns, around the middle of the 1950s. He founded Robert Taylor Productions after his contract expired in 1958, and he featured in The Detectives from 1959 until 1962. He was still used by MGM, who called him back for the Western Cattle King in 1963. In the 1949 film Conspirator, Taylor met a young Elizabeth Taylor. She was only 16, and because of the stark age difference, several people felt they appeared to be father and daughter on film. He was friendly to her, encouraging her to pursue her studies and recognizing her abilities. In 1952, they reteamed for Ivanhoe, a movie she didn't like but which made $11 million in rentals and was one of MGM's highest-grossing films. MGM set up a meeting between Taylor and Ursula Thess, a German actress, in 1952. The Coconut Grove is where they first met. She later recalled that when he took her to the dance floor, she felt like she was in seventh heaven, but Taylor dated other people, including his ex-wife, because he was still cautious after his divorce. After Ursula offered him a final ultimatum, they were married on May 23, 1954. Ursula brought 2 children from her former marriage to Wyoming in a simple ceremony on a boat. Both Michael and Manuela were influenced by the hardships of war-torn Germany. They had a hard time adjusting to Hollywood life, especially with Taylor's high standards. As Michael's problems worsened over time, he attempted to poison his biological father, George Ths, in 1964 when he was just 18 years old. After being found guilty, he spent a year in a reformatory. Later, Taylor and Ursula had 2 children of their own, Tessa in 1959 and Terrence in 1955. On a property in the San Fernando Valley, they constructed a cozy house. They were characterized by friends as a loving pair. In contrast to the stern character depicted on TV, Tessa recalled her father as being affectionate and amusing. Many Hollywood celebrities would have shied away from the danger that Robert Taylor took in 1959. When he entered the television industry, most performers believed it was beneath them. His classmates were astonished by the move, but his show, The Detectives, showed that he was correct. It started off as a 30-minute crime drama on ABC and aired for 2 seasons before moving to NBC, where it was renamed Robert Taylor's Detectives and expanded to an hour. Taylor portrayed Captain Matt Holbrook, a shrewd and resolute head of a top-tier police force. In all 97 episodes, the show contained written by Gene Roddenberry, who would later invent Star Trek, and attracted future stars like Adam West years before Batman. This was more than just a fresh part for a movie star of his caliber. It was a daring move into a developing field. Another unique possibility presented itself by 1966. A personal friend, Ronald Reagan, was departing Death Valley days to run for governor. He was replaced by Taylor, who also occasionally acted. The show's odd fusion of Hollywood and politics came from taking over from a man who would go on to become president. Taylor and Reagan have been friends for decades. And Reagan was the one who gave the eulogy when Taylor passed away. During his tenure, Taylor maintained the series' momentum and demonstrated his tremendous devotion to television at a time when few movie stars did the same. Taylor had left MGM in 1958, 8 years prior. This was no typical departure. His deal had been the longest in Hollywood history, lasting 24 years. His initial salary was a meager $35 per week beginning in 1934, when he was only 23. Working with celebrities like Greta Garbo, Spencer Tracy, Elizabeth Taylor, and Clark Gable, he was earning $5,000 a week by 1940. Before departing, he starred in more than 80 movies. An era in which actors were lifelong employees of a single studio came to an end with this change. The work after MGM was consistent yet frequently unsatisfactory. Later on, Taylor said that he wasn't particularly proud of several of the movies he produced during this time. He now grabbed what was available after the big studio jobs vanished. Even yet, there were some high-caliber moments, such as his 1958 Party Girl, his last MGM picture. However, the shift was obvious. He had to adjust without the studio's help. He moved farther into television as a result of that change, where The Detectives became a distinctive feature. Behind the scenes, the effects of a lifetime habit were already being felt. For decades, Taylor had smoked more than 60 cigarettes a day, 3 packs a day. Since he was a little lad, he started to feel exhausted and worn out by the spring of 1968, when he was 57. When he eventually sought medical attention, his dyspnea continued to worsen, despite his belief that it was simply a result of aging or excessive work. The reality was heartbreaking. His frequent smoking was most likely the cause of his lung cancer. The public was initially led to believe that he had valley fever, but Taylor calmly stated, "Oh, sure. It's cancer. Okay, lung cancer." On October 8, 1968, he underwent cobalt radiation treatment and underwent extensive surgery to remove his right lung. Surprisingly, he continued to smoke right up until the procedure. He was still controlled by his addiction even after receiving the diagnosis. Amazingly, he continued to work. He continued to concentrate on Death Valley days. Taylor continued to appear on TV while battling for his life as Ronald Reagan's career shifted towards politics. He filmed as much as he could, even appearing in episodes, in between hospital stints and treatments. He displayed incredible strength throughout this time, but at a high physical cost. The family then experienced another catastrophe in May 1969. Michael T.H.S., Taylor's stepson, was only 23 when he overdosed on drugs in his Los Angeles apartment. This occurred just 2 weeks prior to Taylor's own demise. Although Taylor had treated Michael as his own, he was actually the son of Ursula Thieves, Taylor's wife from a previous marriage. It was awful to lose twice. Taylor and Michael were buried next to one another. Robert Taylor passed away in Santa Monica's St. John's Hospital on June 8, 1969, at 10:30 a.m. He was 57. In his last moments, Ursula was present. His glitzy MGM days, when he was making over $50,000 a week and living on a 113-acre ranch with cattle and horses, were a long cry from this. Over the course of his 35-year career, he starred in over 70 films and 2 successful television shows. One of the last genuine stars of Hollywood's heyday had passed away. On June 11, 1969, Ronald Reagan stood in front of the Church of the Recession. As he spoke, his voice caught. The future president found it difficult to remain composed as he bid his friend Robert Taylor farewell. He was more than just a gorgeous face. He described a man who possessed quiet dignity, valued his craft, and was an expert at it. The tape now sits in the Reagan Presidential Library, a treasured piece of California's political and film history, because the moment was so potent. Reagan's political activity was influenced by their connection, which had been established in the conservative circles of old Hollywood. Reagan portrayed Taylor as the epitome of Midwestern decency in his tribute, a man whose death left a void in a field that was already losing its old guard. There was another legend for whom Taylor had been there. He carried Clark Gable's casket into the same church where he would eventually be buried on November 19, 1960, walking with Spencer Tracy and James Stewart. The funeral was strictly guarded, formal, and included military honors. It was an uncommon reunion of MGM's most talented men, who had vying for parts but held each other in the highest regard. Gable's choice of Taylor as a pallbearer demonstrated his respect for him, acknowledging a career that had paralleled his own transformation from romantic lead to tough hero. An entire period seemed to come to an end when Taylor passed away on June 8, 1969, at the age of just 57. He set a record of 24 years under contract with MGM that would never be surpassed. Between 1934 and 1958, he had survived the rise and fall of the studio system, outliving luminaries like Joan Crawford, Katharine Hepburn, Tracy, and Gable.